Here's a story from SCNR.com. Governor Abbott, Texas' right to self-defense supersedes any federal statutes to the contrary. Texas Governor Greg Abbott invoked America's founding fathers while vowing to continue to secure Texas's border in a new statement. His message comes 2 days after the United States Supreme Court ruled the federal government could remove razor wire along the Rio Grande installed by the state to deter illegal immigration and drug trafficking. As the Biden administration's appeal makes its way through the court, Texas responded by installing more razor wire on January 23rd. Quote, "The federal government has broken the compact between the United States and the states. The executive branch of the United States has a constitutional duty to enforce federal laws protecting states, including immigration laws on the books right now. President Biden has refused to enforce those laws and has even violated them." Abbott says Biden has smashed records for illegal immigration and ignored Texas's demand that he perform his constitutional duties. Continuing, President Biden has violated his oath to faithfully execute immigration laws enacted by Congress. Instead of prosecuting immigrants for the federal crime of illegal entry, President Biden has sent his lawyers into federal courts to sue Texas for taking action to secure the border. President Biden has instructed his agencies to ignore federal statutes that mandate the detention of illegal immigrants. The effect is to illegally allow their en masse parole into the United States. By wasting taxpayer dollars to tear open Texas's border security infrastructure, President Biden has enticed illegal immigrants from the 28 legal points of entry along the state's southern border, bridges where nobody drowns, and into the dangerous water of the Rio Grande. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre told reporters during a briefing on January 23rd, the Biden administration was certainly glad the Supreme Court had permitted the federal government to remove the razor wire, which she called ineffective. Approximately 6 million illegal immigrants have entered the United States during Biden's 3 years in office. So what we're seeing right now, New York is freaking out. Eric Adams says the immigration crisis will destroy the city. Mayor Brandon Johnson has been accused, reportedly, there's a reporter who has asserted, I'm very careful with my language here, he has suffered panic attacks and had to be hospitalized because the immigration crisis, or as the immigration crisis is expanding rapidly in the city. And there are many communities in Chicago, many black communities that are in uproar over the resources being given out to these migrants. So when you have major Democrat strongholds outraged over the immigration crisis, Joe Biden publicly admitting the border is not secure while actively trying to make it less secure, I don't know what you call this. A rogue executive branch engaged in criminal activities, accused by Texas, the second largest state in the union, of violating the law. Now, we have videos. Let me see if I can pull up one of these videos here. There's the letter. Here we go. Take a look at this from Chuck Calesto. The Texas National Guard filmed marching where I believe this is near Eagle Pass. It just says Texas National Guard. And there have been many responses to this. In fact, I believe we have the Governor Kevin Stitt of Oklahoma saying Oklahoma stands with Texas. Ron DeSantis, of course, said, if the Constitution really made states powerless to defend themselves against an invasion, it wouldn't have been ratified in the first place, and Texas would have never joined the union when it did. Texas is upholding the law while Biden is flouting it. Florida will keep assisting Texas with personnel and assets. So this is going to get interesting. Where are we currently at? 3 states, Florida, Oklahoma, and Texas, are aligned. Texas is declaring supremacy over the border jurisdiction. The question then that we've been asking for the past several days, will the federal government actually make moves against the Texas National Guard?
I don't think so. Showing that Oklahoma and Florida are willing to stand by the Texas National Guard and the Texas government is fulfilling. And it's also indicative that, like, any state that sits by and watches their federal government seize control of their own state troops has got to be like, hell no. We can't let the federal government go rogue. Rogue is a nice term. Can't let the federal government overstep its bounds and seize our own state soldiers. Like, those guys pledge an oath to the state to defend and preserve the state. They're not the federal government's troops.
I'm not sure if the Guard does that or not. I don't know how.
Constitution, most likely. But the federal government is rogue completely.
Yeah.
The Biden administration is a rogue agency at this point. This is a fact. When the Biden administration is breaking the law to the extent that Democrats are upset about it. despite the fact they'll defend him for re-election because these people are insane. But when you have major cities, there is a plurality of those polled saying immigration is the most pressing issue.
Yeah.
And people in these cities that are Democrat left-leaning are freaking out. This is the unifying force. I mean, perhaps we're getting Joe Biden's pulling off an Ozymandias, for those who get the reference. He is deciding to become the super villain that will unify blue and red states against him. Maybe by the time the election comes up, the immigration problem will be so bad that blue states will beg Donald Trump to help save them.
Maybe somebody is doing that through Biden. They're creating an Ozymandias situation where, like, we're just going to make Biden the worst of the worst so that we can actually unify the country because Trump ain't getting it done.
For those that don't know the reference, Ozymandias is the villain in the Watchmen graphic novel who stages an alien invasion to force the Cold War nations to unite against a common enemy. And so I don't believe that to be the case. I don't believe that there's anybody smart enough, or I genuinely believe this is completely in line with what Democrats have been doing for some time. And even though you have blue cities in major blue states in uproar over this, these people are still blaming Republicans and they're still backing Joe Biden.
I talk to my parents and I bring them up as just kind of general normie, watch the MSNBC, but they're very smart. They're very adaptable to new information, but they tend to watch just the TV instead of the internet for their news. They don't. And I was like, this immigration thing is horrific. And they're like, yeah, it is horrific. Both of them. And they get their news from like MSNBC, but they were like, is absolutely, it's too far. Like, what in the hell is happening kind of thing. Like, easily that I could probably convince them to not vote for the guy that's causing it to happen.
This is going to be the issue that I think Gen Z is going to really wake up to too, because once they see that these immigrants are the ones that are taking spaces in America, taking over the cities, our cities are increasing in crime, and your tax dollars are directly funding the immigration crisis as well. I mean, Texas had no other choice but to enact Article 1, Section 10 in the Constitution because the federal government isn't doing anything about it. And honestly, the federal government hates American people more than Democrats, I think, hate American people, because they're the ones that are creating this havoc in our country. And I mean, I saw a poll that immigration is a bigger issue going into the election cycle more than inflation. And I mean, we're seeing inflation rates skyrocket, but I think people are finally starting to understand, like, oh my gosh, our border really is open. And what Kareem Jean-Pierre Presek said, if it was ineffective, then why move it?
Inflation is a byproduct of immigration.
Yeah.
Mass migration results. I mean, look, by standard economics, mass migration, they even say it will create demand. So you're going to have a ton of people demanding more and more and more. You're going to drive prices up. But the best way to explain it, we talked about this before, and you can give me your thoughts as someone who is Gen Z. I watched this video where it was this Gen Z guy being like, welcome to a New York micro apartment, $2,000 a month for like 70 square feet. It's 5.5 feet wide and like 10 feet deep. So we're talking like, 55 square feet, and it's got a sink, no bathroom, nothing else, a single window. And if you want to use the bathroom, it's shared in the hallway, $2,000, $2,000 per month. And so I think what we're seeing now, the reason why Donald Trump is getting a lot of Gen Z support, and several polls have him up with Gen Z, which is crazy. Look, if you're a boomer, it's real easy to be a boomer and have access to wealth. On average, boomers have more access than Gen Z does. For obvious reasons, you're older, you've got a savings, you've got a retirement or something. So you're likely living in a house or an apartment or condo or something like that. Gen Z is trying to move into places, and they're running up against a wall.
They can't afford it.
At the same time, they can't afford it. Guess what's happening in New York City? Illegal immigrants are being given hotel rooms. They're given free money, free places to stay. Now imagine this. Imagine you're 22, 24. Hey, you are 24. You're fresh out of college. You got a degree like they told you to get. You can't find a job, and you're standing outside with your little, attaché case holding your resumes, and there's an illegal immigrant buying free food and going into their hotel room with a bed, a TV, a bathroom, and security, private security. And you're like, maybe if I'm lucky, I can get one of those shoebox pods to live in. You know what's going to happen? They're going to be like, I'm voting for Donald Trump.
It's the you will own nothing and be happy mentality, because when you get an entire generation who simply cannot afford on their salaries to even save up money to then even invest in property, they're going to rent for the rest of their lives. And it's true. I mean, these immigrants are getting everything handed to them. I mean, now in New York, free health care. In California, you have Medi-Cal, where 700,000 migrants were approved to get free taxpayer dollar paid health care. I mean, these people are walking across the border with absolutely no consequences, with a court date that's 2 years out, phones paid for by us, and they're getting more amenities than your college graduate who's $60, $70, $100,000 in debt and will never be able to pay that off.
We got to do like I don't know, like a Curb Your Enthusiasm style joke or something about an illegal immigrant in this nice hotel with a comfortable bed and a TV, and then the hardworking guy is like living in the pod and eating bugs.
Because he hires him to clean his toilet or something.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, they're living the American dream more than Americans are.
Yeah. It's really when you see it with your own eyes is when things start to change. Like, I can imagine residents in New York walking down 42nd Street to go to work where they're being paid like $16 an hour, and they have to step over homeless people, obviously. And then you find out that there's people that don't speak English staying in these hotels. Like, I remember in LA in 08, I had friends that were illegal immigrants that were working at the restaurant I was working at and working in the environment, and they were getting put up in like $400 a month hotels where I was paying $1,200 or $1,300 a month for mine. And I was just, the jealousy that in me from that was like rampant. I had to check myself. I'm like, no, they're getting an opportunity. But if you saw that in mass, I could imagine like what in the hell is going on.
It shouldn't take one state busing thousands of people to other states so that way the other states feel the pain of the migrants that are coming in to get the rest of the country to pay attention. And it definitely shouldn't take those measures to have the federal government ignore its job. Like, the federal government is supposed to take care of the borders, and it's preventing the state from trying to close the borders that the feds refuse to take care of. The fact that the House hasn't drawn up papers of articles of impeachment for literally not doing your job. Right. Yeah. The president ignoring the border. The House should absolutely have drawn up papers. Absolutely.
No, but I mean, the federal government is rogue in its entirety.
100%.
The Supreme Court being like, no, you can't defend your borders. What? The federal government being like, we're going to facilitate human smuggling. And Congress, which has a Republican advantage, doing nothing to try and corral the corruption. Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at TimCast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.